Brendan Banfield was found guilty on all counts for the murders of his wife Christine Banfield and an innocent bystander that goes by the name of Joseph Banfield. However, there was much ambiguity and questions that were raised during the course of these proceedings that warrants this particular recap. Therefore, for this video, I shall be providing a recap of the key moments from each day of this trial and also activate my catch-up-man powers to sequence the key evidence presented, assessing whether either side's theory had held up and what impact it may have had on the jury, because I firmly believe it was the sequence that revealed the merit of these theories and not the credibility of a particular witness. I will also try to answer a few questions such as why the plea for time served was such an unjustifiable option despite the necessity, and also how it may have impacted the credibility of Juliana Magalhaes. Hi, I go by the name of Hines, your friendly neighborhood catch-up man, and welcome back to Catch-Up Court, where we are on a mission to structure the chaos of trials bit by bit, making it digestible for you. For every case that we do cover, it has a repository and detailed reports that accompanies it, like the Brendan Banfield case that we are currently recapping on. So go ahead and check out the Catch-Up Court website where you can learn more about this particular case, and I promise you that in 15 minutes you will come away knowing far more about this trial than having to rewatch all 8 hours of the 10-day stream. The links are in the description below. That said, I still encourage you to go ahead and watch the full proceedings for yourself, because it is a really good trial to follow, and also you will see how one man slowly hammered the nail in his own proverbial coffin just by the virtue of opening his mouth. Okay, so we are now about to get into the recap and start by going into the court days of this trial, recapping each key moment, testimonies, and also the evidence, so that you have an idea of what you are in for. If you have already watched this trial, or you just want to know generally why I say that this man has completely made the guilty verdict inevitable by opening his mouth, then skip to this particular timestamp. Otherwise, let's get into the recap. So, to lay the foundation, as the lawyers would say, before activating my catch-up man sequencing powers, we have to start from day one. Both sides start off their case like this. The prosecution, through Jennifer Sands, laid out their theory of the case, arguing that in a nutshell, Brendan Banfield wanted his au pair, Juliana Magalhaes, who is from Brazil,
planning their future. On a trip to New York, Brendan revealed his desire to get rid of Christine. Divorce was not an option for him. He didn't want to lose custody of Valerie. He didn't even want to share custody of Valerie. Email accounts to create a fake profile to lure someone in who was into kinky sex.
Things went off the rails when Miss Sands suggested that the means to carry out this particular murder plot was by creating an account on a kink site called FetLife and lured the second victim, Joseph Ryan, who we are going to call Joe Ryan for the purposes of this video, to his eventual death. My eyes perked up at this point because immediately I thought, that's just peculiar. Like, what's wrong with old-fashioned poisoning and putting cyanide in the drink of your husband? Why, or wife in this case, why go through all of these steps? But I put those thoughts to one side and just waited to see how they would deliver on this particular theory. So over to the defense presented by John Carroll. Bless his heart, because he went up and presented his kind of theory. And, you know, to be honest, they didn't really have a central theory. They just said that Juliana Magalhaes was saying everything convenient for the state because they gave her a plea deal. Immediately, when this opening statements was done by the defense, this didn't sit right with me, and I'll return to this later and give my reasons for why I believe John Carroll had multiple theories that he could have used and simply just couldn't decide after reviewing the materials that were relevant for this particular case. So as usual, the state are the first to present their evidence, and present their evidence they did. They presented the 911 call through Alicia Dale, and they also presented the responding officers with Justin Hugh, Zachary Beckner, and also Michael Gibbons, who all testified that they rendered aid to the casualties that were at the scene. Beckner took Brendan to the hospital where Brendan washed his hands. Of course, the defense all through this case were focusing on that to show that there was a break in the investigative process, but I digress for a second. Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Megan Kessler, who testified to how both Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield died. Joe Ryan was determined to have died from gunshot wounds to the head and chest and was opined to have been briefly conscious before his death. And Dr. Kessler determined that Christine's injuries and the cause of her death were neck stab wounds, which were determined to be fatal. And importantly, she had a defensive type of abrasions and bruising. I have to skip ahead a bit here because it was determined on the defense presentation of evidence that Christine was still breathing, according to the first responders, before she eventually died.
She got multiple stab wounds to the neck. Okay, secure those guns.
Ma'am, I need you outside now.
She's breathing, she's breathing.
What do you need?
Get medics in here now.
But something happened that I just never expected to happen this early on. I saw a 22-year-old woman, I should say, walking authoritatively into the courtroom, ready to testify. Her name?
Yes, Juliana Perez Magalhães.
This caught me off guard, admittedly, because for such a key witness, right? And based on the flow of the witnesses, I was thinking what's going to happen next was the analyst to confirm everything. And then she would be the last to tie everything together with the lead detectives of this case. And then it was at that moment, as she started talking on cross-examination, that I immediately understood why she was on this early. So, Juliana Magalhães, the au pair of the Banfields, dominated day 1 and day 2 of the proceedings. She testified to starting an affair with the defendant on August 2022, and this affair was private. Then she began testifying to the origins of the murder plot, saying that the divorce was not an option for Brendan as money was involved, because Christine stood to receive a lot of money from the divorce, as well as custody of their only daughter, Valerie. Of course, the state theory is beginning to take shape here.
Yeah, he said he wasn't going to hire anybody because that is something that throughout investigation can be discovered easily, and that he had heard of a website called Fat Life. That's what he was going to do.
Hearing this from the co-conspirator and the cooperating witness in this case, I just had a bit of questions regarding this, and it made me ask, what exactly was the reasoning for her to sign this particular plea deal when we heard about it in the opening statements? Questions I will have to return to later on in another video, if I'm being honest. Magalhães testified how they went to the gun range to practice their shooting so that they could kill Joe and Christine and begin their new life. However, this is the part that we must pay attention to, because she begins to detail the creation of the FedLife account.
Were you present when he created the FetLife account?
Yes.
And did he use his own email address to create the account?
No, he did not.
What email address did he use?
He created a new email account for Christine, and Christine's name.
And were you there when he created that email address?
Yeah.
And how there was a selection process, such as never agreeing to meet up for lunch whenever it was requested by a user. Then Magalhães also confirmed to speaking with Joe Ryan. Then she details what happened on the day of the murder, where she says that she woke up at 6 a.m. and was getting Valerie, the daughter, ready for the day, detailing that the plan was that she was supposed to call the defendant and say someone strange was coming into the house. She even noted where Joe had parked.
You said you saw Joe arrive. What, if anything, did you see him do?
He just went straight to the driveway, parked next to Christine's car.
This was material because despite not having a core theory, it is really unusual for an intruder, because that would have to be the most logical step, that this was an intruder if Joe was shooting him in self-defense. But I'm digressing. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just saying it is very unusual for an intruder to obviously park at the literal house that they were going to rob, or commit a crime at, not somewhere more obscure. Magalhaes details what happened when Brendan returned to the house from McDonald's, how Brendan told her to stay in the basement with Valerie, and then she also details how she then leaves the basement to the bottom of the stairs where Brendan had signaled to her to basically come up, and they both went upstairs to the room where Christine was supposedly in danger. As they got to the room, Magalhaes testified that Joe was on top of Christine, holding her down as instructed to do so on the FetLife messages. This was when Brendan came in and shot Joe. Juliana details Christine's few last words, where she instructed Magalhaes to call 911, and as she was about to, Brendan just said something to her and she hung up the phone. This was the bulk of her testimony.
Where on her body was he stabbing her?
Her neck. A few times I looked and I was able to see him stabbing her, and he would stab, and other times he would hold the knife in a position how that was.
Magalhaes also added that Joe was still moving, and scared for Brendan's life, she had shot Joe, and that's how both Christine and Joe became victims in this particular case. Day 2 rolls by, where Magalhaes testified to the plea agreement that she had signed and the terms of recommendation as well, saying that she pled guilty because she felt a lot of shame. Then cross-examination rolls by, where all the credibility of witnesses goes to be buried, unless you are Dr. Lapasada from the Karen Reed trial.
Well, it didn't hit him, so it doesn't matter.
Then you are basically immune to this fact, because you're invincible, so to speak. But I digress. Anyways, the first question she confirmed was the exact reason I understood why Juliana was called this early. You see, Juliana confirmed that it was sometime in October 2022 that when the plan to kill Christine had begun. Don't get me wrong, bringing her on this early does make sense from a narrative arc standpoint. She was at the scene. She shot Joe Ryan, as she testified to, but you just can't help but feel that the Commonwealth knew that their own witness had her own set of unique problems. Magalhaes also testified that she cannot remember which room the FetLife account was created in. Prison letters were also read to her, where she had said, "I'm not willing to spend the rest of my life in prison for something I didn't do. They want me to cooperate is the only way they will drop the charge." And also the letter that was written saying that living in Brazil doesn't suit Brendan. There was, of course, way more letters than this. There was letters about media deals, where she was signing deals worth up to $25K to $100K for interviews. However, this is the focus from all of that. In that sea of noise where letters were being introduced came a revealing testimony. Magalhaes confirmed that on the 25th of October 2023, her mother had told her to say that Brendan had planned all of this.
And so my question was, with regard to the previous message, that was where your mother said to you, tell everyone that Brendan planned this. And within 2 days, you've signed a plea with supporting evidence saying that Brendan planned this. Understand? So my question was, when did you say Brendan planned this to the police for the first time?
Well, during the first interview we had.
And do you know when that was?
I remember it was a Friday.
Okay. Was it in October?
It was in October.
Okay. So October 25th, does that sound right?
Sounds about right.
Was that where you were in a room with another prosecutor, not these two, was asking you questions?
Yes.
Okay.
This detail, I am sure, impacted the jury in numerous ways, and I am pretty sure that this was why Magalhaes was not going to feature at any point after this car crash of a testimony. However, despite all of that, she testified for the first time that she learned that Anastasia, which is the name of the account on FedLife, the fake FedLife account, basically the catfish account, was Christine's middle name, after the defense asked why it was chosen. And from there, the Commonwealth began cleaning up the crash site where Juliana barely walked out alive. Back-to-back witnesses were introduced on days 3 and 4 that corroborated Magalhaes' account through the first witness, Kenneth Fortner, who testified that Magalhaes' property was being moved from her bedroom into the primary bedroom where Christine and Brendan Banfield shared their marital bed.
Did you have the opportunity to look for any signs of forced entry in the home?
I did. I did not locate any obvious signs.
Did you have the opportunity to return to the home on October 13th, 2023?
I did.
On that date, did you again photograph the house?
I did.
Did you inspect the bedroom that had been Juliana's?
Yes.
Is this the same room?
This is the same room.
How were you able to identify it?
The Brazilian flag above the bed.
Did you notice that anything had changed?
There were no longer any items in the closet.
Okay. Did you eventually find her clothes?
I did.
Where did you find them?
They had been moved to the primary bedroom's closet.
Is this the primary bedroom closet?
Yes.
And was there anything that you saw in the closet that made it clear to you they were Juliana's clothes?
There were the red lingerie style clothing items and the yellow t-shirt with the green hem on the sleeves.
Had there been any other changes in the primary bedroom?
Pictures that had once featured Brendan and Christine had been taken down and replaced with Brendan and Juliana together.
Then Terry Leach came on and showed the inventory of items that Joe Ryan had in his possession that corroborated the creation of the FedLife account, the communications that was going on there. He also showed the CCTV that Brendan was at McDonald's and was literally at the toilet for literally 7 minutes. And this is a unique man experience here. Even if I am on the toilet with my phone, I am there for at least 10 minutes, like with my phone, by the way. I'm there for 10 minutes max, probably scrolling, and I'll probably have pins and needles. So I knew that immediately this guy had to be talking to somebody on the phone, because without the phone or anything like that, you're usually in there for like a minute or two. I mean, all you have to do is just put a rod, like put it down, and it goes out. But anyway, lewd sidebar aside, Leach went on to show Banfield's call record and also showed Juliana's call log, where there was 3 911 calls made, and also a call from Brendan corroborating Juliana Magalhaes' account. The next witness, all were basically DNA analysts, which basically confirmed whose DNA was on what. However, another detail that I believe would have had a profound impact on the jurors in this case was the weapon that was used to stab Christine to death. Yeah, the defendant's DNA was eliminated from that particular weapon, and Joe Ryan's DNA remained on that weapon.
I then recovered a sample of red-brown staining from the underside of the handle. Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalhaes were eliminated as contributors to the mixture profile. I referred the data for this mixture profile to a separate analyst.
Of the testing on the mixture profile from the underside of the handle of the knife near the juncture of the blade and the handle.
Okay, so the likelihood ratios generated showed statistical support for the explanation of both Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan as contributors to this stain, or the stain B on the knife handle.
The last witness for the Commonwealth, Christine's father testified to Christine's blood issue and health problems that she was having, which of course was to show that it would have been unlikely for Christine to be into that BDSM life. And that was it. That was their particular case. And I kid you not, at this point of the trial, my jaw dropped to the floor. I just cannot articulate how really angry I was that the Commonwealth had left their case as is, with literally Joe Ryan's DNA on the weapon. Brendan excluded from everything, and it was all based on Juliana's compromised account. I just couldn't believe it that would be how they left things. I even said during the trial that this was going to be a hung jury. And on day 8, the defendant took the stand, and the minute that his lips just started moving, I just had to revise my hung jury statement. Therefore, to understand why I made this pivot myself, and also the defendant's testimony and how incriminating it was, we have to go back to day 6 to briefly understand the context leading up to the defendant's testimony. So the defense had took over from this point, and on day 5, of course, they presented their textbook strategy, which is basically attack the integrity of the investigation, which they did by recalling Faulkner to basically play the full body cam, which showed that Christine was still alive and she didn't die as fatally, which kind of undermines the expert testimony in regards to the possibility of someone dying from those wounds immediately. Now, if you watch the proceedings live, you know I am glossing over a lot because it was one man named John Carroll, the defense witness, that literally made this trial way longer than it should have been, because it could have easily ended on day 7 or day 8. But we just had to sit back and witness how this man couldn't even get the names of the witnesses into the record. We have to witness how he was fumbling on the computer and using the systems.
To reboot a little bit and get more organized. The wheels were coming off there, and I don't want to waste the jury's time anymore or witnesses' time.
That being said, the witness Leah Smith brought in to testify about how the state was already theorizing what could have happened without there being any evidence. And of course, this is bad detective work because it just shows tunnel vision rather than letting the evidence lead you to the suspect. And this is when David Giacchio came in to testify for the defense as well. All these witnesses could have been called by the state, but they weren't. It was literally the defense that was calling these key witnesses. And he just basically came in to testify that he was the one that basically presented the catfishing theory to everyone else. And the main purpose that he was brought in was because not only was he testifying to Juliana's Magalhaes visa issues, he was also testifying to the very fact that he was on the Brady list.
I'm not aware that anybody keeps a Brady list, but the Commonwealth has told me that they make certain disclosures about an investigation where I allowed an employee who had a brain tumor to stay home on light duty at the direction of a commander.
They also introduced another witness, which I felt like it was an own goal, with Sally Fires. Sally Fires basically solidified the state's theory on cross-examination by basically saying that Brendan's daughter Valerie was overheard by one of the agents or detectives, whichever one it was, speaking with Juliana and asking her if she was going to be her new mom. Also, another witness was brought in. He goes by the name of Brendan Miller, who was the data analyst for this particular case. Also, I cannot stress how the defense probably did confuse many when they were called in their key witness. Really, in my opinion, there are 2 key witnesses, but this was the first key witness, and this was the data analyst who was assigned to the case that wasn't called by the state, which was extremely weird due to the gaping hole that I felt was left by the state when they rested their case without having one single data analyst in a case about data creation. I cannot explain how this was so weird to see happening in real time, and at the same time seeing the defense almost fumble it by making something that should have been really easy to execute look a lot harder than it was. That said, though, I will explain how this turned out to really help the Commonwealth after the sequencing of the data. Miller was the only one that disagreed with the catfishing theory, but there was nothing really material that was extracted from him, from the defense, except the creation of the FedLife account that was made on the 17th and also the Gmail account that was made on the 9th of January 2023.
What's the significance of January 9th?
That was the day the Gmail account was created.
Do you know who was on WhatsApp of the people that were using devices in this case?
Multiple people were using WhatsApp.
Other than Christine, who else communicated with WhatsApp with her?
Juliana.
Okay. In this situation, do you have any conclusions as to who Christine is communicating with?
In context, it would appear to be Juliana.
And of course, based on the evidence, the 17th of January was the main source of contention that had both Miller and the lead detective reassigned in this particular case, which is why we also never heard from the lead detective. We only heard from the crime scene lead detective bring together the evidence that was recovered from the crime scene, and that was literally it from the state. So the defense point was really clear. This case was a mess filled with internal fighting, and on comes Arilitsky, who was their last key witness. I can't believe I'm saying last key witness when the defendant literally testified, but Arilitsky was the last key witness that basically came on. He is a catfishing expert that literally dominated the whole of day 8 before Brendan Banfield took the stand, and he brought in a lot of data to really corroborate at first on face value the theory that the alternate theory anyway, I should say, that the defense were trying to go for. Let's go into the key testimonies that he made on this day. So on day 8, Arilitsky began by showing the difference between the fake catfish Gmail account and the real Christine Banfield Gmail account, starting with the appointments that she had made and also solidifying it by showing the CV that she had. And then he went on to present the activity involving the fake Christine Banfield Gmail account alongside data of all 3 parties, including steps data of Juliana Magalhaes on the day of the murder, which I have to sequence much later. However, decisively, Litsky determined that the FedLife accounts created for this particular scheme was created by Juliana Magalhaes. It was her email that was linked to the FedLife account, which just made me think when I was watching all of this unfold, why not just use the fake Gmail account to create the FedLife account? Like, you know what? I'm digressing. Of course, with the Commonwealth seeing how this is a threat for their case, sensing how they were cornered on cross-examination, they used the best tactic possible, which was just inference, which was a subtle rearguard strategy to protect Juliana's reputation, testimony, credibility, whatever it might be. So they put everything into this one basket, and they put all the attention. Jennifer Sands put every attention that she had on Brendan Banfield, the defendant. Admittedly, I didn't notice any of this, by the way, during the coverage. As you see, on the cross-examination, the Commonwealth focused on the 14th of February.
Going back to, we have no other usage of FetLife or Telegram with Christine's phone as this progresses beyond January 14th when we have an unknown S21 using FetLife, correct?
February 14th, but correct.
Okay, sorry. All right, so when we then look to, let's say, our next event on January 23rd, you've told us that 11/22, the CBRN at Gmail, CBRN920 Gmail, is logged into on the laptop, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you gave us 6 exhibits to show that Brendan Banfield was not at home when the FetLife chat was initiated, some 7 minutes later, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but you have not told us where Juliana Perez Magalhães was, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I will go into the importance of this period when sequencing the data. I was thrown off mainly because I just didn't understand why, well, I still don't understand really why Jennifer Sands would bring up the possibility that the defendant and Christine were planning on going on a vacation, and it could have been likely that they were doing that. And also, I just can't fathom why you would make the argument that you can't put someone behind the screen. You just gave the defense the opening to just reassert the only objective evidence that they had, which was just the fact that Juliana Magalhães had created the FedLife account with her email. This was the recross-examination of Litsky, and all through that, like I said, the screen argument just didn't make sense to me. You can't put someone behind the screen argument, especially when your case is predicated on the use of a computer to masquerade as somebody else. The argument that you can't put someone behind the screen just screams of a massive admission of defeat, because that is your job. You have the burden of proof. You are supposed to put someone behind the screen if you're going to come with the case that, yeah, this person was catfishing. Then Jennifer Sands created an opening out of nowhere that you can only notice when looking back at this case, because I didn't even notate this at the time when I was creating the reports. And it was basically when Sands had highlighted that Juliana had broken up with the defendant on February 2023 without any additional explanation, which of course frames it as the possibility of a crime of opportunity happening. This was on Brendan Banfield's cross-examination.
If we look at line 30, which I'll highlight for you here, February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2023, Juliana tried to break up with you, right?
I am sort of angry that this didn't really stick out to me during the day of notating and watching the testimony unfold, and it was only after I slept on it and the report was already published I thought, oh shoot, that's what she was actually trying to achieve. This became apparent that this was pretty much her strategy, and the strategy that I'm referring to by actually presenting this breakup information was not for the jury. It was just for Brendan, just to see how he would react to that information that was being brought forth. And lo and behold, it worked, because what happened next was extremely vital in all of this. So to go into the defendant's testimony on direct examination after he gave an history lesson on how him and Christine had met and had a productive relationship when he got to hiring Juliana Magalhães to be their au pair, there were revealing statements that were made by Brendan when he was testifying to the question that was asked about him regarding the plan to murder Christine, which he said,
"No, there was no plan. At this point, our relationship is maybe 6 to 8 weeks old. I think that it's an absurd line of questioning for something that is not serious, that a plan was made to get rid of my wife. That is absolutely crazy."
Which I must admit, at the time, it did sound logical. I mean, that is kind of absurd, but when you sleep on it and you just think back to it, you just kind of wonder, well, technically speaking, the plan or this whole ordeal didn't crystallize until like 5 months into it, disregarding the gun range, whether you believe that or not. 5 months into it, we know, based on your evidence, that this is where the plan was basically implemented. So this is 5 months. Does that now mean that you did plan Does that mean that it's more true then? It's less absurd? It was just bizarre. But I do agree with it. I do agree with the overall sentiment that he was making, which was the fact that it would be absurd to just plan the murder at that point. And it also helps their theory, which was that Juliana Magalhaes was compromised and is doing whatever the state is asking her to do, which is just basically support their catfishing theory that they were already preconceiving, that they already had the idea to basically implement, and it was just that they just finally found someone that would do it for them when they didn't have the lead detective and the data analyst side with them when they presented the idea to them. However, if you watch the trial monitoring streams with me, you will just know that when he was making these statements at the same time, you would know that I was thinking a lot of the time that is very, very convenient things to say, including the 6 to 8 weeks, because it just seems like he was testifying to basically make his story fit the evidence, not tell the story as it was happening. Like, for example, Brendan's statement about not having access to any of the devices owned by Christine.
Had you ever taken Christine's laptop or taken her phone out of a bag near the door?
No, I don't take her laptop. I have no reason to use her laptop. I don't have access to her laptop. It's not a password that I know. I have my own work laptop. I have my own home desktop. I have my own, actually I have two cell phones. I have a personal cell phone and a work cell phone.
Which we should get into the importance of the info now, because if you have two mobile phones, then what stops anyone from believing that you were pretty much using another device to basically carry out this murder? But I'm getting ahead of myself because it was just convenient nonetheless. It was also very convenient that he was testifying to regularly going to McDonald's in the mornings and other food places. Like, to be honest, like when you look at it in context, he has a wife and a au pair, two women in the house. And I'm sorry to go into a sexist route, because I know it's inherently sexist for me to suggest what I'm saying. But when you look at what the jury, they can rely on their life experiences. Who in their right mind is going to think that this guy, I can accept maybe once or twice, but regularly to go, and when you can really get a ready-made breakfast at home, it just seems like just a convenient excuse that was made on the spot to basically justify why he would have to be at McDonald's that day, knowing that the evidence is pretty much stacked against him. And I also find it was convenient that when he said that he was having multiple affairs with the other au pairs that was working for him, and it just made me think, like, literally, like, for some reason you were just having so many affairs with au pairs, and Christine just kept hiring more and more for you to indulge. I digress. Let me just continue on, because I'm going to have to skip ahead here for a second into the end of the day 9 testimony on the redirect examination, where Brendan had basically said that Christine was also having affairs and sexual difficulties because of her interest in BDSM. At least that was what was suggested.
Back in New York, I know that Christine had an affair where she was involved in a BDSM relationship for a month or two. In our bedroom in New York, I observed her with bruises, several of them, on her body that I was unaware that she had previously. Okay, I'm aware that there was another brief relationship where she was stalked for a few weeks. She had difficulty walking. She was walking very stiffly,
And this is where I said I kind of expected this, because I couldn't help but lose it for just a moment as it was actually happening. I couldn't believe it, because I said on the trial monitoring stream, I think it was around the time that we got to Brendan Miller's testimony, that I said if the defendant is to maybe advance their theory a bit, he would have to testify about the possibility that they were having relationship problems, a scenario where he was possibly having an affair. Him. And I'm stressing him because I thought this was the beginning that their theory was unfolding. I really had the belief that from the opening statements that they were just going to bring evidence in and then close with a main overarching theme so that it sends the message a lot clearer, because that's what it was looking like. They were leading with data. They were presenting a lot of the experts that was missing conveniently from the state. Yeah, so like I said, they were having relationship problems, a scenario where he was possibly having an affair, and Christine, of course, trying to be a good wife. This was my theory anyway. That's what I was thinking was developing. Christine trying to be a good wife perhaps suggests, like, let's have a threesome or something, or let's explore some kink play that might help us heal and spice things up in this marriage, because they've been married for quite a while. Who knows how these things resolved itself. But this was just me blurbing out. Like, never in my wildest dreams did I think that this would actually happen, because it's strategically stupid and a fantasy at best, because you would be digging yourself into a hole that you just can't get out of. Think of the thought of it alone, right? You're offering this particular testimony, and it would just come across naturally as you are just trying to evade accountability because you had an affair and do not want to be straight about it. And on top of this, the person that you are even testifying about is not even here to defend themselves. So you're just basically denigrating your wife memory, the person that you claim to love. I thought there was no way on earth, based on those conditions, that anyone would offer this testimony. So before the testimony regarding Christine being into BDSM had happened on the redirect exam, the defendant gave his account of what happened that morning, which he went on to testify that he had gone to McDonald's that day for his morning routine, and also he tried calling Christine and hurried back to the house. Brendan Banfield testified saying that he noticed there was a vehicle of concern at the house when he got back there, and this is where he took both Juliana and Valerie, his daughter, to the basement with him, which of course corroborates Juliana's testimony. But at the same time, this really became his own undoing later. But first, he testified that he had heard what he described to be Christine likely having an affair.
I heard the sounds of, I would say, moaning, as well as sound of skin-on-skin contact.
And what did you think was going on at that point?
Sex.
Why didn't you call 911 at that point?
Well, I believe that it was an affair that was going on at that point. That doesn't seem like an emergency for the police to be involved in, was my thought at that moment.
Banfield then went on to testify that he saw Christine naked on all fours as he opened the door to the bedroom that they shared, and Joe Ryan was clothed, which was a brand new piece of information to all of us observing during this trial. However, Brendan went on to give an account of words we have already heard echoed during the course of these proceedings.
Christine said, "Brendan, he has a knife,"
corroborating Magalhaes' account. He then went on to give what I accepted to be quite a truthful testimony about Christine desiring to purchase new windows, which actually wasn't really contested by the Commonwealth on cross-examination. And to be quite fair, this of course diminished their theory, the Commonwealth theory, a lot. Of course presented the idea to anyone watching, to anyone observing this, that maybe Juliana is not to be trusted with the fact that, she must have known that Christine was planning to get new windows, so she crafted a story around that. Noticing this vulnerability in their whole case, Jennifer Sands went straight on the attack, abandoning what was, to be honest, now looking back in hindsight, it seems like a pawn chess piece. If you think about it, it's like, okay, you are going to take out that piece. Here I am going to take you out now. So Jennifer Sands went straight on the attack to show that the defendant only testifies to what facts corroborates his story and not actual accounts of what happened, by bringing up what he failed to testify to during the hearings, the pre-trial hearings.
But at the preliminary hearing, you didn't even admit to Christine being your wife, correct?
That's what I was instructed to by my attorney.
Okay.
Then Jennifer Sands went really personal and stuck the knife, twisting it hard by literally showing that there was a breakup on February 2023 with Juliana, which is what I was alluding to earlier, that this question was designed for Brendan and Brendan alone, not for anybody else. There was no theory around this. This was just to get at him.
February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2023, Juliana tried to break up with you, right?
Juliana broke up with me numerous times.
Okay, on this occasion, she said, I told you I'm seeing other people. We spoke about this already. I won't be going, speaking of this trip to New York that you were going to take with Valerie,
Yes.
right? I'm sure you two will have lots of fun, something to that effect, right?
Yes.
Okay. This upset you, didn't it?
No.
No? Okay, you beg her in the next several messages to please talk to you, correct? How are you? Do you want to talk? We can chat. We'll scroll up so you can see more.
And those are a different day, that appears.
His answer, by the way, was brand new information that we have never heard at all. The answer was, me and Juliana had broken up many times. We never got to hear this on his direct. We got to hear about the affair on his direct. We got to hear about the multiple affairs, so many things that he's now accounting for. But this one, no, there was no account. There was no account that would corroborate the fact that Juliana was having so many affairs that he would even consider moving her into the room. And to be quite honest, I don't think I did not bend for this particular question, right? I don't think I would have even noticed the convenience of Brendan Banfield testifying that Christine was into BDSM on the redirect examination. But of course, I have to stress that this was not a detail that Brendan Banfield had prepared for, and likely forgot to mention that him and Juliana were not even on a stable ground. The Commonwealth definitely brought their A game on days 6 to 9. I have to agree with that. I only wish that they were just a lot more consistent throughout the course of these proceedings, because it was really up and down all through. But nonetheless, Jennifer Sands was pressing relentlessly when she was asking the defendant about his feelings for Juliana. And after many attempts by presenting different types of materials, the defendant in the end acknowledges that he and Juliana did in fact break up before Christine's death, revealing why the state applied this method, which was to crystallize their theory in the jurors' minds that Brendan Banfield killed Christine to be with Juliana, despite Brendan's denial to the question regarding that he didn't kill Christine to get back with Juliana. But at this point, would you really believe him?
You are contending, again, these feelings, these very strong feelings, these let's be together for the rest of our lives feelings did not exist when your wife was alive.
Correct.
Okay, and they certainly did not motivate you to kill your wife.
Juliana and I weren't even together when Christine died.
All right. You had broken up, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you need to kill your wife to get her back?
Definitely not.
The message was clear. as all of this just connects back to the Discord breakup in February 2023, like the crime of passion. He was about to lose her. So even if there was no pre-planning, the pre-planning starts right here to literally execute the plan. So even if he was going to turn back and they made the account to put everything together, this is him making an active step to say, listen, I will give you everything you want. Please just go back. That's if the conversation happened, but we would never know because we never got to hear anything in context to all of this, because the strategy I really believe that was being employed here by the state was inference. More credibility leaks by the defendant was observed when the composed nature that he was, to be honest, giving off in the CCTV when he was at McDonald's was masterfully highlighted by Jennifer Sands once again, which just led the defendant to just acquiesce and say that, oh, I was just walking fast. Okay. Then a critical piece of information was presented by the Commonwealth, which just did not allow the defense any room to breathe, where Jennifer Sands had Brendan acknowledge that Joe Ryan had bought lubricants from Walmart, which, to be honest, for the record, he didn't even have to do this. He could have just literally said, I don't know what Joe was doing. But of course, Brendan, with his compulsive need, which is what the state was revealing, he just had this compulsive need to fit his story to the evidence, which kind of makes sense as well at the same time because he works in the federal government. So he acknowledged to this particular fact that he did not have to acknowledge to, because it just shows that he is thinking with the evidence in mind. He has the evidence in mind after seeing all the discovery.
You said that you heard what you thought initially were sex noises, right?
Yes.
Okay, but we know from the physical evidence recovery kits that were taken from both Mr. Ryan and your wife that there was no semen, no DNA from Mr. Ryan found in or around your wife's genitalia, correct?
Therefore, as a result, Brendan also had to acknowledge that there was no semen or any of Joe Ryan's DNA around Christine's genitalia. This was just bullying at this point, because Queen Jennifer should have been reprimanded for this intentional infliction of emotional distress on Brendan. But I digress. As if this wasn't enough, as if that wasn't enough, the defendant went on to write his own obituary when he testified that Juliana was upstairs when the original 911 call was made.
Looking at Juliana after I told her to call 911, I was looking at Christine.
Okay, so you're also then not aware that Juliana hung up on 911 15 minutes prior to the call where you spoke to them?
My awareness was that she made that original call in the upstairs room.
She made the original call in the upstairs room, and where were you?
No, my understanding is that she actually made the call originally while she was in the basement.
Oh,
as
not
per
the
her.
upstairs. Okay. Okay, so you weren't there then, is your contention?
I never heard her make the original call. I never saw her make the original call.
Which, of course, does structurally corroborate the defendant's story. However, in context, he only testified to this when it was highlighted to him by Jennifer Sands that he was in the same room with her when she made the original call upstairs, right? And this error was so consequential because now it just corroborates Juliana's account that the plan was to make it seem like a 911 call to try and get help. But really, it was an alibi, because that's what Juliana testified to, that both of them were in the basement first, and that's where she placed the first call. And to think that this particular piece of information, this testimony that was offered so chaotically, was only as a result of Sands just trying to get facts back into the record. That's it. That this was such a harmless thing to do. It was such a harmless move. Out of every one of Jennifer's moves so far, this is probably the most tamed and the most non-threatening there is. And for him to capitulate under this, Like, this was too funny to really witness live because it was just really simple. Banfield had testified that a 911 call was made twice on direct examination while he was giving aid to Christine. And on his face, like I said, it just wasn't a challenge by Jennifer. But of course, Brendan has the mind. He knows the data. He knows the evidence. And noticing how absurd it would be for anyone to believe that it took 13 minutes to call 911. Like, how absurd it would be to plan a murder after 6 or 8 weeks of an affair. Seeing how this just suddenly corroborates Juliana's account in real time, he had no choice left but to correct and pretty much destroy whatever credibility he may have had left. And to be quite fair, he probably had loads of credibility, but we have to accept that at this point, it's gone. And on redirect examination, this is where the defendant went into a lot of detail for the first time that he observed bruises on Christine. This is how he learned that she was having an affairs, because the affairs was also like, kink play, BDSM, whatever. This is why I actually said that science should be sanctioned for emotional distress, because clearly Brendan is so traumatized that he's hallucinating facts, like as if it was ChatGPT hallucinating legal cases. But I digress again. The defendant went on to testify that they both had counseling for the affairs in 2013 or 2014, around that time, which now presents the idea that it was a long history of having affairs, that both of them just somehow made their relationship work after all of that. Despite the long history of the affairs, now coupled up with his testimony about having affairs with multiple au pairs, it just like let's be real. It just structurally reveals the value of the cross-examination of Litsky, where he acknowledged that Christine and the defendant were likely planning a vacation. And this is insane foresight by the defendant. I'm going to explain why. This is insane foresight by the Commonwealth to even see that this moment was likely coming, and they prepped for it, because knowing that he admitted to the breakups with Juliana, like the defendant just bolsters this by testifying additionally that Juliana was angry with him when he went on vacations with Christine and spending December 2022 with her. And she went back on dating apps. So like I said, he knows the data. So this information must have come from the fact that, of course, he heard Jennifer bring it up. So he's like, okay, I can work with this. It's just like I said, it's just this information, at least the two pieces of information, the Discord and also just the vacation. It seems so minute, and it probably was, but getting it into the record, I just think it was just for Brendan. I don't think anyone is going to be impacted by these testimonies, but really and truly, it draws Brendan out completely, because now you get the idea that he's only framing this breakup, and he just made up this fact just to, again, not only fit the testimony. Christine likely does not know that this guy has ever had an affair. That's what all of this suggests to me. At the end of day 9, we heard Jennifer Sands say that someone by the name of Patrick T. Smith wishes to testify after listening to the defendant's testimony in full. And that's who we will briefly touch on now, because Smith testified that on the 24th of February, that there was no meeting scheduled for that day, which is very important because it contradicts Brendan's testimony about having a job-defining interview that particular day at the agency that he works at. And it just hits undercuts every alibi that he had, that that this couldn't have been pre-planned to have executed on the 24th, because of course, why would you murder your wife and then go straight to work? Like, that's just not going to happen. You would want to get rid of that and just not have that interrupted. But of course, he was trying to go for a situation in which it was interrupted. So the one thing that would have held the story together would have been, the meeting was set to happen, and change course. How important was his testimony? You guys let me know in the comments. But that is the whole trial recap now. And with that recap of the case, you may be wondering, why was Brendan's credibility not the reason that the trial turned on its head that could have had a decisive impact on this verdict? And like I said earlier, right, it was the sequencing that showed which side's theory prevailed and had the most impact. Allow me to take you on a quick adventure. We have had a voluminous amount of data presented by the defense, which is just so weird. But anyway, here are the key artifacts that I have selected for this particular assessment that I'm going to put into a timeline. Using all the trial exhibits to put this whole thing together, we have the first piece where it was a communication on Facebook between Christine Banfield and someone called Carol Copen as Christine sought to purchase new windows on the 20th of December 2021. This may be the reason why the prosecution had no other choice but to continue to make the screen argument, as logically most couples do tend to share devices. So it's their only move that they had, because this has completely taken out the pre-planning element in regards to Brendan doing everything possible to ensure that the neighbors do not hear, which is what Juliana Magalhaes had testified to. So we now got to January 2023, and this was the period where Brendan Miller was alluding to regarding why he didn't accept the catfishing theory, primarily because of the 9th of January 2023, based on Christine's and Brendan's phone activity at 10:42 p.m. on the 9th of January. The message says here that Valerie played Castle together. Then we see a login to Google through Mozilla Firefox at 11:10, approximately 28 minutes after the conversation, where no pictures were exchanged, with 3 emails sent to the same Banfield, the fake Banfield email address that was created. This is very important because the act of capturing a picture and sending it around, which was on the 17th of January 2023, the day of the FetLife account creation, we have Christine's picture taken at 7:20 p.m., a Windows login at 9:59 33 seconds p.m. by a computer belonging to Christine Banfield due to the computer name, and the Wi-Fi login 3 seconds later. Then at 9:59 36 p.m., 3 seconds, we have the computer device, the computing device, gaining access to the system, and based on the web history, the device opens Google at 9:59. I should say the operator of the device opens Google at 9:52 p.m., where it was just an access, a browser access. And crucially, this access was made by the real Christine email. As you can see, whoever had access to this particular device had access to the fake Banfield email, and it just also coincided with the creation of the FetLife. Well, let me put it like this. It also coincided with the search for FetLife, which was at 10:07:58 and visited at 10:08:25 p.m. So, however, on the 9th of January, whoever controlled the account possessed the pics already. This reasoning is based on the fact that this is Christine's laptop, where this search is made on the same login that Lululemon was searched for afterwards, 10:43:52, the same day. Then it's likely that Christine did all these things registered onto the device by the virtue of the real email being used to access all these things. Okay, so we will have to revisit this because there is a lot to really unpack in regards to that thought. But in regarding to the whole Lululemon search history as well as the FetLife login, this was likely the tension that was caused between the detectives. But the main point is, despite all of that, one sequence, you can see how much reasonable doubt is already created here. Even if an argument is to be made that someone else could have used the device, right? Which is why the state were not really confident with their behind the screen argument, in my view. That search for Lululemon is deadly to me, because even if you can somehow put someone else by the device and say that, you know, the profiles and all of that, searching Lululemon, right? Continuing with this particular sequence, searching Lululemon at 10:43, and on the same day at 10:46 to at 21 p.m. you then search. This is just 3 minutes after the Lululemon searches. You then go on to the Facebook and download at 10:47:25 this single piece of artifact. You know, is probably why Brendan Miller had concluded that it just couldn't have been Brendan catfishing, and probably, as you know, Christine would have likely been using the device at this time, even if you could also reasonably conclude that the FedLife account back at 10:08, even if you can conclude that that access to the FedLife account was probably someone else, maybe let's just say Brendan Banfield, right, that used the laptop to access FedLife. You just have to come to the conclusion that the pictures downloaded to even use for the FedLife could not have been done by Brendan Banfield. And this is probably why Miller was unwilling to change his report and his opinion, which led him to being reassigned. At this point, I should probably disclaim, if there's any substantive mistakes that I've made in this video, please call it out. Let me know in the comment section so that I can correct it immediately, because I just don't want to misinform the public at all. I will also make corrections on the Ketchup Court site. So now back to the sequence. On the 17th of January 2023, the timeline continues to reveal another search, which was highlighted that there were Broadway tickets that were being purchased at 11:53 p.m. And this artifact being introduced by the defense, it was to solidify the idea that it was likely Christine operating this device. Despite all of that, right, one question just kept creeping back up and just kept eating me up, which was, why was there a lack of core theory by the defense, and both in the opening and closing? And I want to look at this objectively, because there were two solid theories from here that they could have picked from. You have Christine having an affair and just unfortunately met the wrong guy theory. You know, they just somehow, she just chose the wrong serial killer, basically. And you also have the theory of Juliana posing as Christine to carry this sinister plot out herself. And at first, on my previous streams of this particular case, I personally thought that they were going to present their core theory later on in the case as the case progresses. And it seemed apparent that the core theory was really Juliana being behind all of this, when her Gmail account was the one that was linked to the whole FetLife account. And it just seems absurd. It just seems weird to me why there was a strategic pivot to present this information and give the idea that it was Juliana that was orchestrating all of this, and then somehow on closing examination, we just don't get the theory wrote home. It's just a repeat of what was on opening statements, that her plea, that her testimony was only bought and paid for, and she was not credible. And the minute I sat back to think about why this pivot existed, well, you guessed it, he goes by the name of Harry Litsky. You see, something Litsky said when he testified to Exhibit 260, the logins for the 8th of February 2023, to put Brendan away from the laptop at 10:12 p.m., which of course shows that he likely wasn't at the location for 2 days where there was access to the fake Banfield account on the 7th of February and subsequent conversation where restraint play was established.
248 is already in evidence.
What's the significance of your analysis of this particular record that's already into evidence as Defense Exhibit 248?
This was actually just to illustrate the record itself. I believe the next slide is.
So the mention of Exhibit 248 was important. Well, at least it stuck out to me where he said that's not what he wanted revealed. The mention of that exhibit revealed the Wi-Fi access that put Brendan at the house on the day of the FedLife account creation on the 18th of January 2023, as he acknowledged on cross-examination.
Juliana's phone is not in the house on that day, but Brendan Banfield's devices are both present, correct?
To my knowledge, they were, yes.
Okay.
When I took a look at Exhibit 298, that was also introduced by Litsky, and to my surprise, Juliana's Wi-Fi was not connected to the Banfield's IP address at all. And I believe that this was 108.51.89.25, which was the Banfield's IP address because it was Exhibit 346, where on the day of the murder at 4:14:30 a.m., the password of the FedLife account was successfully resetted, if resetted is a word. And when you sequence all of this, right, I do see the logic that this could have been Christine. And it was quite interesting that other people picked up this fact as well, that this could have been Christine controlling all of this and just wants to keep the whole affair quiet and just wants to have that whole kink play out.
Because we don't know who's behind that computer. And yes, Christine could have been into that type of lifestyle, regardless if you like it, I like it.
Hold on. Oh, whoa. Do you actually believe she was actually into that lifestyle? I mean, Brendan.
No, what I'm saying is she could have been. Yeah. Look, she could have been. I'm telling you, I look at people every day and I wouldn't think that they into stuff, and they are into it. That is the way the world works.
But
right?
she had a condition though.
No, but if she was into that, there would have been evidence she was into that. There's no way that there's zero trail or trace of any other searches or activity. And just him saying that stupid, whatever he talked about, oh, it was a problem in our marriage a long time ago, she wanted to do. No, sir, that was an afterthought you decided to throw in there.
That said, though, I can really see why David Giacchio was pressing so hard on having the catfishing go on. So now when we go back to the 9th of January, which is the next natural point I wanted to look at, because that's when this whole fake email was being, the fake Gmail account spawned out of nowhere. There was not even a connection to the same IP address as the one of the day of the murder. When you examine the IP addresses of the phone on that day, you can see that at this midnight period, right, there was no, Juliana's Wi-Fi was not connected to the Banfield's IP from 11 to 1. That's when the connection began. This is what Jennifer Sands, I believe, was playing for without even highlighting this, so that in case they may have an inquisitive jury, this would be far more impactful for you to go and see that Juliana Magalhaes was likely not present when the fake Banfield email, the fake Christine Banfield email, was being created for the purpose of this scheme. The last connection was at 2736 to the IP address of the Banfield, and a totally different IP address at midnight, which was around the same time that this whole account creation was taking place. So it stands to reason that the defense probably saw this and saw how corroborative that it was to Juliana's testimony, which just, this is the main reason why I really, really hated the Commonwealth. I would have literally not made that screen argument. With all of that said, like I said, the decisive moment was on the 20th, as both Christine and Brendan were at home.
Move on to February 20th, 2023 at 10:58. We've got the laptop at home in use. And again, the location data suggests that both Juliana and Brendan are at Lifetime Fitness, right? Do you remember this one? This one's noteworthy because she's not on FetLife.
She being...
Christine, presumably, right? The laptop is not on FetLife. The laptop is not on Telegram during this window when Juliana and Brendan are both absent from the home.
That might be. I'd have to look, but I think there was a period of time. There's obviously a period of time before the activity occurs where I don't know where everybody is.
Right. Well, but we know that the adults are out of the house, but for Christine, presumably, and she's not using this opportunity to hook up online, right?
I guess that's fair.
Okay. But as soon as Juliana gets home, which we know because her iPhone connects to the home network at 11:06, by 11:08, we're logged on talking on FetLife, right?
Possibly. I'd have to see the slides, but that sounds right.
Okay, I'm just noting from your testimony. If it sounds incorrect, let me know, we can dig in. But to the best of your recollection, did you testify that 11:08 CBRN is logged on, and then from that point we move forward to chats with FetLife?
It sounds accurate, yes.
Okay. At 11:58 that same night, Christine Banfield's phone sends a text message to Brendan Banfield, I think it's Facebook Messenger again, saying that she's going to bed. Bring up the toilet paper, and Brendan responds, "I'll be up in a couple," correct?
I remember that, yes.
Okay, and then we see that Christine's phone, again, the phone, continues to browse Sheen, nursing schools, and pens, right?
Sounds familiar.
Okay, meanwhile, literally 2 minutes later, Telegram is in use on the laptop. Correct?
Sounds accurate.
Right, so on the dot, midnight, that Telegram call takes place on the laptop. 2 minutes after her husband says, "I'll be up in a couple." Correct?
Sounds accurate, yes.
Okay.
And to be fair, you can actually see why, because Jennifer Sands, the inference that that strategy that she took really paid dividends. I mean, it was really high risk. What if the jurors just doesn't pick up on what you're trying to infer? Because she never mentioned the 9th, even though Juliana Magalhaes is not at the house on the 9th, on the Wi-Fi list, based on that information. She's not at the house around the times that the pictures were found regarding, around the time that those pictures, those files were being made. That timeline is there. But the chess move, I got to admire. I got to point it out, because that chess move to highlight the 20th and just not go into much aggressive, not really be pushing it to the forefront and trying to make the point, hammer it home, just to put that chess piece so that whatever the defense chooses to do, they have this one last evidence that they can pull out of nowhere. And I think that that's why the defense was so stunted when it comes to the final arguments, when it comes to the closing arguments, to really drive the point that Juliana was the one to have been controlling this laptop, this device. Because really and truly, based on the searches, based on all the data, is a woman it suggests that a woman is controlling this. So which woman is the real question to basically answer? And when looked at it from this standpoint, yeah, I can appreciate the strategy when the defense made their closing arguments and then she came back for the rebuttal. I think it would have been nice to really just highlight the 20th of February again. Not again, sorry. They never highlighted it. So bring it up and then pretty much say who was on the device on the 20th. At least drive the inference home, but I can't recall hearing anything to do with that. With that said, I'm just gonna leave it there. Thank you ever so much for giving your time and watching this particular video right to the very end. You really are a true tastemaker at heart. I would love to know your theories, your thoughts about this case, because yeah, this was an intense experience watching this live and trying to just keep up with all of it, not letting Banfield's account blur the facts. It was really intense. I shall be activating my Ketchup Man powers once again on the Unintentional Juror podcast to show what the jurors likely deliberated on in that jury room and how they possibly arrived at the verdict that they did, and give my candid thoughts about this particular case. Affairs that lead to murder, like in the Brendan Banfield trial, happens quite a bit. In fact, a lot. How about the case of Monica Cementilli, a wife, a mother of 2 lovely daughters, married to a celebrity hairstylist that goes by the name of Fabio, who was tragically killed by the same man that was having an affair with Monica. It is a very interesting case where she's accused of being part of the murder plot to kill her husband so that she can have the insurance money and run away and start a new life with Robert Baker, a convicted sex offender. We have been covering this case on Source and Order, our weekly show. The playlist for the weekly analysis of this particular case should be on your screen, where we are trying to decipher the logic behind the verdicts by examining closer the process. I go by the name of Hines, your friendly neighborhood Ketchup Man, and this has been The Ketchup. Bye for now.